Have you ever faced a day where every step forward feels like a battle? Meet Quang, a young engineer thrust into the harsh world of a construction site where patience is tested and dignity is challenged. From enduring his manager's cruel outbursts to silently bearing humiliation, Quang hides his struggles from the people he loves most, his mother and Linda, just to spare them worry. In this story, witness his silent resilience, the inner strength that keeps him going, and the emotional journey of endurance and hope. Subscribe now and follow Quang's journey of courage and heart. The morning sun had barely risen when Quang zipped up his faded blue work jacket and stepped out of his small rented room. The air outside carried a heavy smell of dust and concrete, mingling with the sharp clang of metal from the construction site across the street. It was another day at the site, a place where dreams of tall buildings and bright futures were built, yet where dignity was often buried beneath layers of noise, sweat, and orders barked in impatience. Quang, a young engineer in his late 20s, had only been working there for a few months. Though he always arrived early, reviewed every plan carefully, and worked harder than most, he had already become a target of his site manager's hostility. From the moment Quang set foot on the project, the manager, a thick-set man with a permanent scowl and a voice like a hammer striking steel, seemed to have taken an instant dislike to him. Maybe it was Quang's quiet nature, or the way he refused to flatter or argue. Maybe it was because Quang was new, an easy outlet for someone who enjoyed showing power. Whatever the reason, each day brought a new way for the man to remind Quang of his place. If a measurement was off by even a few millimeters, he would shout loud enough for everyone to hear. If a report wasn't on his desk fast enough, he would sneer and toss it aside, muttering about incompetence. Quang tried to stay calm. He told himself that patience was a kind of strength, that enduring today would lead to a better tomorrow. But the site was an unforgiving place for kindness. The heat of the sun reflected off the steel beams, burning through his clothes. Dust clung to his face, his eyelashes, even his thoughts. Each insult from the manager cut deeper than the last, yet Quang could only lower his head and murmur a quiet, "Yes, sir." Around him, the workers exchanged looks, some sympathetic, others indifferent. They all knew the rules. In this place, the weaker man stays silent. During his short breaks, Quang would sit by the edge of the site, eating a simple lunch of rice and pickled vegetables while staring at the crane stretching into the sky. He often wondered if one day he would be free from this quiet humiliation. Still, there was something within him, a quiet fire that refused to die out. He thought of his mother, her frail hands sewing clothes late into the night, and of Linda, whose gentle smile gave him strength. They believed in him. They believed he could rise above the hardships. So every morning, when the whistle blew and the foreman's shouts echoed across the site, Quang would take a deep breath, put on his hard hat, and walk back into the dust, carrying not just his blueprints, but also his silent hope that one day, all this suffering would be worth it. That afternoon, the sun blazed mercilessly over the construction site. The heat shimmered against the steel beams, turning the air thick and hard to breathe. Quang wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his dusty glove as he carefully reviewed the structural plans one last time before bringing them to the manager for approval. His hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but exhaustion. He had double-checked everything, measured every beam, corrected every number, yet he knew it would never be enough. With a quiet inhale, he straightened his back and walked toward the small site office, clutching the folder close to his chest. The manager sat behind a cluttered desk, cigarette smoke curling above his head like a dark halo. When Quang stepped in, he didn't even look up. "What is it this time?" the man barked. "The revised report, sir," Quang said softly, placing the documents on the desk with both hands. I've made the adjustments you requested. The manager flipped through the papers carelessly, his thick fingers smudging the edges. For a brief second, silence filled the room, until the man's hand slammed down on the folder with a sharp thud. "This is what you call work?" he roared, rising from his chair so fast it toppled backward. The cigarette fell to the floor, scattering ash across the tiles. Every pair of eyes from the open doorway turned toward them, the workers, the assistants, all frozen in uncomfortable silence. Quang stood there, stiff, his breath caught in his throat. The sting on his chest was nothing compared to the burn inside. Humiliation spread like wildfire beneath his skin. He bent down slowly, gathering the papers one by one. His fingers shook, but he said nothing. No defense, no anger, only quiet endurance. "Next time," the manager sneered, stepping closer, "try not to embarrass yourself or me." Then he brushed past Quang, leaving the smell of sweat and tobacco hanging heavy in the air. Quang stayed behind, kneeling on the dusty floor, his heart beat loud enough to drown out the noise of the cranes. His throat tightened, but he refused to let the tears fall. He pressed the edges of the crumpled papers together, smoothed them carefully, and whispered to himself, "Just endure it, just one more day." When he finally stepped outside, the sunlight blinded him for a moment. Yet in that harsh glare, he caught a glimpse of something, a quiet resolute, flickering faintly like the light reflecting off steel. No one applauded his patience, no one comforted him, but Quang knew that dignity sometimes meant standing tall even when no one was watching. By the time Quang stepped off the construction site, the sky had softened into a muted canvas of orange and violet, the sun retreating behind distant buildings. The day's heat still clung to his skin, and the dust from the site coated his hair and clothed like a second layer of grime. He walked slowly along the quiet streets, the weight of the folder in his bag now feeling heavier than ever. His chest still throbbed from the manager's earlier outburst, and though the physical pain had faded, the sting of humiliation lingered like a dull ache. With each step, he replayed the scene in his mind, the way the papers had struck him, the scorn in the manager's eyes, the silence of the workers who had witnessed everything. Arriving at his small, dimly lit room, Quang set the bag down gently on the floor. He sank into the chair by the narrow window, staring out at the street below, watching children play and neighbors go about their evening routines. Everything seemed ordinary, yet he felt profoundly alone. He had never allowed anyone to see this side of him, not his mother, not Linda. If he told them, he knew they would worry, would beg him to quit, to protect himself. But how could he? How could he admit that despite his hard work and dedication, he had become a target of ridicule and anger, forced to swallow his pride and endure daily humiliation? He pulled out his phone and hesitated, thumb hovering over the message box. There were drafts he had started countless times, messages meant to reassure his mother, to calm Linda's heart. Each one began with, "I'm fine," because he knew that any other truth would only bring them pain. The words that could have conveyed his frustration, his hurt, his fear, remained locked inside, gathering weight with each passing hour. Instead, he typed a single line, short and sterile. "I'm okay. Work is going well." He read it over, deleted it, and typed it again, finally sending it. The screen blinked once to confirm it had gone through, but the emptiness remained. Quang leaned back, letting the quiet of the room wrap around him like a protective shroud. He closed his eyes and imagined Linda's soft smile, her gentle voice, the warmth of his mother's hands. These thoughts, fragile and fleeting, were the only comfort he allowed himself. He thought about tomorrow, about the site, about the manager's temper and the folders that might be thrown again. The thought made his chest tighten, yet he refused to let despair take root. He told himself it was all temporary, that endurance now would lead to something greater later, that one day his efforts would be recognized and his dignity restored. Hours passed, The sky darkened, and the city lights flickered on, casting a golden shimmer through the window. Quang remained there, motionless, holding on to a quiet hope that flickered stubbornly, a fragile flame against the weight of the world. He was tired, humiliated, alone, but within that solitude, he nurtured a secret strength. Though no one had witnessed his struggle today, and though no one knew the depth of his suffering, Quang understood one immutable truth, that sometimes the hardest battles were fought in silence, and sometimes the greatest victories were won by enduring, by keeping hope alive even when the world seemed determined to break you.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Lý Tử Ninja Review. Vậy là trong câu chuyện của chúng ta ngày hôm nay thì Quang trong quá trình làm việc trên công trường của mình, anh đã bị quản lý công trường, người làm việc cùng công ty với anh và chức vị cao hơn anh chèn ép và gây khó dễ cho anh. Hắn ta không chỉ những gây khó dễ trong công việc cho Quang, lại còn buông những lời sỉ nhục Quang, khiến Quang cảm thấy rất là buồn rầu và thất vọng. Nhưng vì nghĩ đến còn mẹ và Nina ở nhà, anh tiếp tục nhẫn nhịn chịu đựng và làm việc. Và điều đặc biệt hơn đó chính là anh không hề tâm sự chuyện này với Nina và mẹ, để cho mẹ và Nina sẽ không phải lo lắng cho anh. Mọi tình tiết hấp dẫn sẽ còn được hé lộ ở các tập tiếp theo. Các bạn hãy bấm vào nút subscribe để đăng ký kênh và nhận được thông báo mới nhất về các tập phim sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày trên kênh nha. Cảm ơn các bạn rất nhiều. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.